Hi DF, I basically bought my Steam Deck with the intention of using it docked, and all I ever use my PSVR for is Half-Life Alyx. So the GameCube and the Steam Frame seem directly marketed to me. What do you think the chances of a release of some big Valve IP to coincide with the launches are? Half-Life 3, VR co-op Portal. Thanks, guys. VR co-op Portal. I kind of like the sound of that. Oliver, there's been a lot of conjecture, a lot of rumor mongering about Half-Life 3 or HLX, I believe it's being referred to. But what do you think are the chances of a release of some big Valve IP alongside the devices?
I think Half-Life 3 is more of a possibility than maybe some people think. Just because even though they didn't talk about Half-Life 3, I didn't really ask too many questions about it, but evidently a lot of other outlets thought to pepper Valve employees with all kinds of questions about Half-Life 3. So we know they for sure have nothing to announce on that front. There have been a lot of leaks out of Valve. Valve is a very leaky company, unfortunately. And so we knew basically most of the significant details about these hardware announcements. But even before I visited Valve in Bellevue, we also know an inordinate amount of details about HLX. I'm probably a couple months out of date on my HLX leaks. But last time I checked, they had all kinds of information on the engine technology, on like enemy attack routines, on models, on storyline, on all these different aspects of that game. So I expect that, and a lot of other fairly informed viewers expect that will be announced fairly soon, and it could have a release date not long after. So I think that is actually a distinct possibility. But I don't think anything else in terms of like VR games is very much of a possibility, because other outlets asked if there were VR titles in development. I know at one point, I think 3 years ago, Valve basically stated they had a few VR titles in development. It seems like those have subsequently been canceled or at least put on ice, because the answer those outlets got back was basically no, there are no VR titles in development. So whatever software you're looking for, it will have to come from third parties. It will have to come from the existing and future library you're going to see from third parties on the Steam store. It's not going to come from Valve itself, outside of obviously Half-Life Alyx, which is quite excellent. HLX, I think, is a flat screen game, reportedly, according to all the leaks. So that will not be a VR title, I don't suspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Actually, let's talk about Half-Life Alyx just quickly, because we do have a comment from Valve that says that they're looking at it. They're looking at trying to get Half-Life Alyx running in a standalone format on the Steam Frame, which is an interesting comment. I mean, the game is quite old now, and you'd kind of hope that it somehow could be turned into a performant enough experience to run on an ARM processor. I guess they could compile it as ARM to save a lot of CPU time for starters. Mm-hmm. Alyx, what do you think is the viability there? And I actually speak because I rewatched your video yesterday where you played Half-Life Alyx running on what were the minimum specs, which was basically like a Core i5 7600 actually, you used an i5 8400, which basically has more cores. And you paired it with the GTX 1060 and the RX 580. Both of those GPUs, I would venture to suggest, considerably more performant than the Steam Frame GPU. So what do you think is the viability of Half-Life Alyx on that particular headset?
I think it would just be lower res visually. And I think it would suffer from many more moments like I talked about when I did that video with John, where you're relying on motion warp essentially for the head to be running at an independent frame rate of the actual game. And I feel like that, I don't like the way that looks, but I think people get used to it quickly. And I think
you seemed okay with it at the time.
Yeah.
It was within a 60 to 90 FPS window.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. I guess nowadays I'm not... back then,
this was 5 years ago.
Yeah, my standards have changed over time. Like as soon as I ran the game afterward on a higher spec PC and it liked it a lot more. So that's the thing. So I think you get used to it. And I do think, though, the best way to do it, I think the native port is interesting, but I think the most interesting thing is just streaming over Half-Life Alyx with their new streaming, essentially, that device is going to have. That is actually, to me, the cool new aspect of the frame that I'm most interested in and how I would use it if I wanted to buy one. And I think that more than a native port, I think that is actually probably the best fit for the frame.
Yeah, that's precisely what Valve told you, wasn't it, Oliver?
Yeah, they emphasized it's a streaming first device. It has standalone gaming capabilities, but they really did emphasize like they have a variety of capabilities in this headset. But the streaming, that's the best experience. It's designed to be paired with a computer running SteamOS, or it's designed to be paired with obviously the new Steam machine, which is quite nice. Maybe you could even pair it with the Steam Deck. I don't think that would be much of an improvement over the standalone capabilities, but perhaps you could do that. I don't think, like, this is primarily a streaming headset. Standalone functionality is a nice bonus. That's the way to think about it, I think.